Awesome. Now it's recording. Okay, I'm going to start admitting folks and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you, Riley.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good to have
Good
you
morning.
here. We're waiting for a big crowd this morning. So as you join us, if you would like to put your name and your company and where you're calling in from, we'd love to find out what kind of reach we've had for this program this morning. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes. Give everybody a chance to get in. Welcome, welcome. Hi, Jared.
Morning.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. So glad to have everybody here this morning.
Yeah,
We
it's great to
caught
see
you before the
everyone.
weather turned really beautiful, so you can spend a little bit of cold morning with us. Next few days are supposed to be gorgeous. Great. Well, I'm going to get us started. And as you're entering the room, if you could put your name, company, and where you're calling in from, that would be great. We're so excited to have you all here this morning. OEN is a team of technically 5.5 people. John Furukawa is our investment contract person, so we call him our half person. He's a full person. We love him very much. But there are only 5 of us. And in order to put on programming like this, we have to tap into the thought leadership of our entire OEN community. And that's folks who are founders. There's governmental organizations and folks we call, I'm going to use quotes, service providers. And those folks have a ton of experience within their fields and can provide insights that founders might not already know about and business owners might not already know about. So I'm really excited to have everyone here. And I'm excited to introduce today's session and our speaker, Dr. Don Jones, founder of Invaluable People. Don brings decades of experience across banking, sales, leadership, and organizational development, along with a deep commitment to helping teams build healthier, more effective ways of working and growing together. Today, he'll be taking us through his leading healthy sales approach, a take on sales that shifts the focus from pressure and persuasion to that of authenticity, trust, and meaningful connections. You'll hear practical ideas and tools to help you start better conversations, listen more deeply, and build stronger relationships with your customers. And then he'll also talk about how the same principles can support your investor and funding conversations. So with that, I'll hand it all over to Don to get us started. Thanks, Don. Oh, wait, sorry, one more thing. If folks can keep their selves on mute and keep your screens open so he can see the audience that he's talking to, that'd be great. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me through the chat. If it's something that that I think is important, I'll interrupt on within his conversations, and we'll have time for Q&A towards the end of this. Okay, now it's yours, Don.
Thank you so much, Riley, and thank you, everyone. Good morning. And yeah, I appreciate your offer to manage the chat. I'm going to be focused on, of course, the slides and my thoughts here. So having your help is awesome. Thank you, Riley, and appreciate the kind introduction as well. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's an honor to spend this time with you, and I'm excited about sharing the Healthy Sales Program as well this morning. So this program grew out of my own experience in sales and in sales leadership over more than 3 decades in banking. A few years ago, a bank president asked me to build a class from that experience specifically. We built one, actually our team did. This one is actually a new version. This is a version that's built off of really my experience specifically, and I'm super excited about it. This is really a combination, which you'd find with me anyway. This is a combination of experience and research. I just finished my doctorate and really love the research side of things. And um, uh, there's a lot of books and articles and studies and stuff like that that went into this, as well, as you may see as well. Um, I do encourage you, if you want to raise your hand or like Riley said, mention something or ask a question in chat, please do. Want this to be as interactive as possible. Actually really love in person because we can really do that, but hopefully we can do that a little bit here online as well. I'll do my best to respond as best I can. So as you can see on the slide, the Leading Healthy Sales program is all about driving sales through the power of human dynamics, and it's part of the Leading a Healthy Workplace series that we have. And let's see. So our agenda is we're going to talk about what healthy sales are, the outcomes we're shooting for, the human drivers that really fuel success. We're going to, of course, get into the framework of the how, and then we'll move into more the leading the process, leading sales, and we're going to finish up, spend a good amount of time. I try to reserve a good amount of time for how this framework might be helpful in terms of working with investors as well. You know, in a sense, we're selling ourselves to investors, and so it seems like this might be a you know, potentially helpful there. So just wanted to discuss that too. Okay, well, there we go. The mouse wasn't working, so I tried enter, and that worked out better. Okay, so what are healthy sales? As I said, they're driving sales through the power of human dynamics. It's really about, at its core, we're talking about embracing and engaging how human beings already work, you know, rather than fighting those natural drives, human nature. And the human drivers that we're really talking about, the primary ones are trust, values, and motivation. And these apply to both sides of the relationship. Because there's two people involved in a sales process, right? Or at least two parties. It can be, you know, groups on each side, but it's the person or people doing the selling and the person or people making the buying decision. And this really embraces that for all parties. So when we work with those drivers instead of against them, we can create healthier experiences and better results. So Riley already introduced Invaluable People. We really help organizations with engagement, performance, and the employee experience. That's kind of our primary focus. We do a lot on culture assessments, cultural assessments, like taking the pulse of a culture, and you know, transforming culture, energizing culture. We do a lot of learning and development. That's actually what my dissertation was on. So I'm particularly excited about that part. We do a lot of process improvements. And then we help with challenges like loss of a key leader, or you know, conflict and stresses and stuff like that in the workplace. So that's just a little bit about us. So why healthy sales? Why would we go this direction? As a sales leader, I've often felt that we try to force people into sales approaches that don't really fit them and don't really fit our clients either. In my experience, when we embrace natural human behavior and human nature instead of fighting it, we gives us the opportunity to unleash human potential and sales potential. I've seen this nearly double production across a lot of offices, and I've seen it quadruple a portfolio. So it's really been successful for me in my career. And as I said, I'm really into research, and research supports this direction as well. Studies on authenticity and impression management suggest that when we're fake, when we're focused on making an impression for our own benefit rather than helping the other person, it actually restricts memory. It increases anxiety, and it decreases performance. And other research connects sales performance with trust building and competence, things like competence, service quality, you know, strong ethics, and lower pressure sales practices. The research also supports customer orientation over seller orientation. A meta-analysis found that focusing on the customer rather than on the salesperson's own needs actually improves performance. Not really a surprise, right? Other research links authenticity with competence, trust, and performance. And in practice, again, in my own experience, I've seen this approach actually widen the talent pool. This approach helps many more people see themselves as capable of selling well. As I've done past sessions, I've had salespeople surround the podium and just excitedly telling me that this approach gave them hope that they could be good at sales, and still being true to themselves. And of course, now because of that, being good at their job. It can also improve retention, as you can imagine, even just from what I just said there, by reducing burnout and turnover, because alignment with values attracts and keeps talent. So that's kind of the why. And the outcomes, what are we shooting for? We call it healthy sales because we're really shooting for healthy performance, a healthy client experience, a healthy team member experience, and a healthy team experience as well. So if you're working with a team, this can really make a difference for your team too. The point is not to choose between performance and humanity. The point is to design sales in a way that really strengthens both. All right, so that said, we've built ourselves up. So what are the drivers of healthy sales? And I've boiled them down to trust, values, and motivation. Healthy sales really acknowledges and embraces human nature, and it celebrates human behavior and people dynamics. Instead of fighting our natural tendencies, it's built around these, the trust, values, and motivation. And these will serve as your foundation for everything else we discuss today. This is the key part of the framework. So the first one we're going to talk about a little bit is trust. Trust is interesting because it's really both a feeling and an action. I think a lot of us kind of tend to feel that trust is, a feeling. It's something that I feel. I feel like I can trust this person. When we get into, authors trying to figure out, scholars trying to say, well, what is trust? The strongest definition out there is that it's the feeling that the other person has our best interests at heart. But it's also about reliability, credibility, performance, follow-up. So that gets into the action side, right? Things like, do people say what they will? Do people do what they say they'll do? Do they follow up on promises? That kind of stuff. And strong trust cannot be built on a single interaction. Frequency of contact matters. Think about the banker, accountant, or other professional advisor. You likely, I would imagine you probably trust that person more when you've connected with them over months or years, at least multiple conversations. And comfort matters too. Do people feel safe in the interaction, or do they feel manipulated? The key question is whether the interaction feels like it is all about the seller's agenda or really about co-creating solutions together. Trust grows when people experience the relationship as safe, respectful, and centered on mutual value. I love this slide. I think this is kind of fun. This was a study, as you can see, using MRIs to study the trust bond and to study distrust. So what really happens is we're talking here really about activating certain parts of the brain through trust or distrust. So the distrust bond activity is associated with areas, well, I guess I don't need to try to pronounce all these, but certain areas of the brain, the frontal cortex, for example, and also with hormones such as oxytocin and dopamine. And you can kind of see the areas of the brain. I'm pointing to them here. You can't see me do that necessarily, but you can see in the top left-hand corner, the trust bond activates these 4 areas. So anywhere that it's white, that's where it's actually being activated in the brain with the trust bond. Now, if we flip over to the other side, on the right-hand side, distrust, you can see that the lit up areas are different. They're different places. And with distrust, in addition to that, there's also stress-related hormones they're activated in that case as well. So you've got activation in the places in the brain as well as the hormones that are released as well for trust and distrust. Well, there's one book, it's not a very big book, but I think it's really powerful. Solomon and Flores, they describe something called basic trust or simple trust. And that's what we experience throughout the day. It's really not either of these. It's not activating either of these. And really, that's ideal, that we can operate throughout the day. And we love having a trust bond. We value those. And of course, we want to build those. But it's not realistic to expect those all day with everyone. So what we need to be, what we need, first of all, is to be free from suspicion. So really, no distrust is the first goal. And then, a deeper trust bond can develop over time. So that's kind of a fun slide. I hope you enjoyed that. It's kind of a getting into the science of it. There are things that we can do to help build those feelings of trust or the action side of trust. Practical behaviors that we can do. You can see them on the slide: reliability, integrity, capability, partnering with people can help. Of course, being accurate and having accurate and open communication, and caring about people certainly does make a giant difference. That certainly, people can tell whether you care about them or not, right? All right, so that's just touching on the trust element. So let's jump over to values. Values are essentially our judgment of what is important. There are priorities. So values clarity, knowing your own priorities, is incredibly powerful. And I think a lot of us have probably at least explored that, touched on that a little bit. And I want to just do a shout out for Brene Brown's Dare to Lead book. There's a section about 2/3 of the way in where she dives into that and helps guide people through how to find their own core values and get stronger at that, and your organization's values. She does a great job. But values clarity, knowing your own priorities. If you know your values well, even when you don't know them, they really guide the person that you are. And if you know them, they can help guide the person you want to be and the outcomes that you want to create. And also, I want to say that alignment with values is energizing and confidence building. When we're aligned, we have to fix things less often, right? We're not, when we go outside of our values, when we have misalignment, that's when we get uncomfortable. And that's when we're not at our best. I certainly can attest to that myself. I've been there many times, countless. But so trying to be as aligned as possible with your values and knowing what they are in the first place is really, really powerful. And it also matters because it matters in sales, because our clients can often sense that misalignment as well. I think we underestimate, how much people can tell, the people we're interacting with can see through us. So we got to remember that. So the third human driver that we wanted to talk about is motivation itself. And I'm going to get into science a little bit here again, too. Herzberg brought up the two-factor theory. He was kind of the first person, this is way back in the 50s, that really he distinguished between what he called, you may have heard of this before, hygiene factors and motivators. So Herzberg said that hygiene factors are those things we really just have to have. Those are our basic hygiene, pay, job security, that kind of stuff. Those need to be adequate. If they're not, then we actually have dissatisfaction. But if we have them, then we're not necessarily going to be motivated by that. What he said was intrinsic motivators are what really drive change, improvement, effort, engagement, all of that kind of thing. And then some of my favorite experts and scholars in the field, Deci and Ryan, they spent their whole careers studying human motivation. And if anybody's ever read Drive by Daniel Pink, outstanding book. Pink actually really popularized, kind of brought Deci and Ryan's work to the world. He had a bestseller on it. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. What what he kind of boiled down from all of his studies, this is pink now, is that autonomy, mastery, and purpose are what he said are the three primary human motivators. Autonomy is really having some power over how you do something. Mastery is feeling that you're becoming good at it. And purpose, really, it could be a great cause, or it could be just success, or sometimes it's even mastery itself. But having a purpose is the third motivator, according to Pink. Now, Baumeister actually has done some work on connection as well, and he's asserts that connection and positive relationships can also be really powerful motivators. So that's why we have all four of them on here, kind of involving all of those authors put together and what the human motivators are, what really does motivate us. So these motivators matter to both the buyer and the seller. For the buyer, do they have the autonomy and the agency in the buying process, or are they being coerced into a rigid system? For the seller, can they become really good at selling in a way that fits who they are? Or do they have to act like a certain kind of person and follow somebody else's rigid sales process? And purpose matters for both. Sellers are more motivated when they're truly helping someone than when they're merely chasing another transaction. And buyers need to know that they're not just a transaction, that they matter, and that they're part of co-creating the solution, that they have agency and that they're part of that too. And connection matters too in that process as for both people as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about connection. There we go. I went over two. Sorry about that. If you think about it, isn't it virtually impossible to build connection if someone feels like you're being fake? I think we've all felt like that. We've worked with somebody who's kind of being fake. And I think that's what authentic sales, which is a pretty popular industry out there or subject matter, is built around that. It's not, I think there's a lot of confusion around authentic sales right now. I've seen a lot of pushback online about it. Like, what really is authenticity? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Is it bringing all of our baggage with us, or can we still be professional? I think it's just about not being fake. Still being professional, but not being fake. As I said before, we often don't give people credit that they can see fake a mile away. And when people see fake, I don't know if you all feel this way, but when I see fake, I mean, I kind of want to run away. I want to run away to safety. This fake is not a comfortable place to be in. Connection really requires being genuinely you. You're still professional and appropriate, of course, always. I'm a banker, so professional, is really, really important. But being authentic, it requires genuine care. It requires really hearing people in order to understand them, and not simply listening for a chance to share a similar experience. That's one thing I'd encourage everyone to do is to practice stopping that automatic response to say, "Hey, oh yeah, I relate to that." Instead ask a question to learn more about what they just shared. Relating has a place. Relating to what somebody just says does have a place, but it can't be the entire conversation. We need to stay aware of the conditions of the conversation. Is this a positive experience for them? And if it's not, what would bring it back to being a positive experience? All right, so we've covered the drivers, right? Trust and values and motivation. As you can saw, we kind of dove into like 4 different aspects of motivation. So with that, the next slide that I'm going to share is really like a test that we can be playing in our head or just use as a reflective test before. Sometimes it's helpful before we are entering into a sales interaction, or thinking about in the middle sometimes, or in the middle of a process, or as a reflective exercise after. So this mindset, I'm calling it mindset guide or test because that mindset is in the beginning. The guide is kind of along in the middle of the process, and the test is that reflective test at the end, the back end. So that I didn't mean to get to 6 and say there's only 3 and then actually introduce 6, but you understand why those last 4 are really motivation, right? But we're just kind of breaking them down here for this test. These drivers, all of these drivers on this page should inform your mindset. They should guide your interactions and of course serve as a reflective test afterwards. For trust, you can ask, do I have the client's best interests at heart, or do I have my own best interests at heart? Do they feel persuaded, or do they feel like I have their best interests at heart? Am I delivering quality that builds trust, or sloppiness that weakens credibility and reliability? For values, you might ask, what values am I demonstrating right now? What values would the client see in this interaction? For autonomy, you could ask, does the client have agency, or do they just feel coerced? For mastery, you might ask, am I getting better at building client relationships that I can be proud of, or am I simply good at transaction volume? And for purpose, you might ask, is my purpose to help the client improve their situation, or simply to sell a product and make money? And last, for connection, does this feel like a transaction or a connection? So that's just kind of a good test for us to all use as we're going through the process. So we have spent a lot of time on the drivers. Now we're going to dive into the framework for the how. And I really have boiled these down into, I know it says there's 6 here, and I'm doing a bait and switch again here, but I'm doing this on purpose, that if we focus on the 4, know, act, connect, and give, those are things that I think 4 is something we can remember and help us build our practice. And we all know that with sales, tracking and rewarding is really important. So we're not going to forget those. We're going to remember those. But as far as remembering this framework, I would encourage us to think in terms of know, act, connect, and give. So the first one we're going to talk about is know. And what we really mean here is that, well, knowing creates mastery. When you know your stuff, you're going to get better at it. It also builds confidence. And with that, builds professionalism. And all of that fuels your own, kind of cycles back around and fuels your own motivation and success. One of the most important things we can do to create a positive sales culture is to take fear out of the sales process. One way to do that is to help people become really comfortable with their values, understanding their clients, knowing their product, knowing your elevator speech. I'm still always working on mine. Knowing your market, knowing your network that you can lean on, and knowing your process. And in the full workshop that we do, this is really just an introduction today. Each of these, of course, would be explored in greater detail. The next one is act or do, really doing the activities, because you got to do the activities. Healthy sales is not passive. It might have sounded kind of, friendly and natural and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't make it passive. It really depends on action and discipline. It's just with a different mindset than the action and discipline you might have seen in traditional sales 101. And actually, from my experience, acting and doing drive motivation. Action fuels autonomy. It gives us a daily purpose, and it helps us build mastery. I was in a session with Tamara Staten at Benefit Corporations for Good a week or so ago, and she quoted Joan Baez as saying, "Action is the antidote to despair." And I don't know that I'd heard that before, but that's a great quote. So thank you, Joan Baez. And we know that. We all know that we have to act to make things happen. And when we're not doing enough, we can feel it. So we got to schedule time to do the activities, and we got to find a way to track them that can give you a little dopamine along the way. It helps keep you going. And as you act, remember the human drivers at every step. Remember trust and values and motivation. These are your mantra, and they're your guide. And then as far as acting, follow-up is especially important, but there's two types of follow-up to think about. You're following up on leads, right? But you're also following up after a good contact or an actual sale. And again, in the full workshop, each of those would be explored in, much more deeply. I confess, I know that I'm talking really fast. And I could tell that's why I needed a drink. But as I was building this and trying to put a workshop into an hour and a half, and allow for the conversation around the investor side, I'm really nervous about trying to get it all into that time frame. So I apologize for how fast I'm going. I hope it's okay. So we'll go to the connect slide next. Trust is really built through frequency of contact. We kind of touched on that earlier. So staying in contact at some level. As a banker, I had a lot of clients tell me that I was the only banker they ever saw. And that they actually, I got a lot of clients that way, because people would tell me they never saw their banker, and I was the only person that they actually saw around town, or that stopped by and visited and tried to get to know them. So having some frequency, and when I say frequency of contact, I don't mean like every week necessarily. I'm just saying, as they, more than one contact, as they get to know you better, then they get to see who you really are, and get more and more comfortable with you. Healthy sales gives the client more agency than traditional 101. We touched on that too. Instead of trying to persuade them to buy, and almost really reducing their role to submission, healthy sales invites them into a partnership or co-creation. So that's the kind of the part of the connection here that's built. You're the expert in your field. So yes, you're the salesperson, you're the entrepreneur that knows your product and its inside and out, but they're partnering with you to co-create solutions for them, and it's a much more enjoyable that way. Authenticity really does matter here. If you're not genuine, you're going to lose them. So again, focus on the conditions and the experience that both they and you are having. The experience may be almost more important than the contact, actually, than the content. It must allow the client to remain aligned with their values and allow you to remain aligned with yours. And then the idea of ask versus pivot addresses a familiar pattern. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know how conversations become like ping pong? Someone says something, and instead of asking more about that, we just pivot to how it reminds us of our own experience. Deeper connection comes from helping the other person feel truly heard. And that means sometimes asking more questions, being curious, and valuing what they have to say. Also give people a chance to wow you. I love having conversations and you're getting to know people. Sometimes you've known them for a long time, but as you're getting into a little deeper discussion and you learn more about them, and you can go, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did all that. I love those conversations. They're so inspiring. But this skill takes practice. And I promise you, as you get better at it, the people closest to you will appreciate it, and so will your clients. So really the discipline of asking rather than just pivoting back and reflecting on how you relate to it, it's one of the simplest ways to strengthen connection. And the last key piece of the framework that we're emphasizing is give. Giving the gift of you is one of the most valuable things you can offer. And of course, again, I mean this in all professionalism and appropriateness, but trying to pretend you're someone you're not, and acting in this like robotic way of being, I got to be a salesperson. That's not you. And giving the gift of you can be super, super powerful. Helping them over selling to them is always the mindset. Really just give, just help them. And don't keep score, because keeping score destroys any connection you may have built. Another book that I want to give a shout out to is called The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann. It's a fable, and so there's times when it might feel a little bit silly, but it's ultimately inspiring. I've done it in book clubs a couple of times, and everyone has felt that way. They maybe rolled their eyes once or twice, but by the time you're done with the book, you're really inspired. Um, Nothing kills a sale or client relationship faster than desperation. You don't need this sale right now. Remind yourself of that. You might feel like you do. You might even be kind of desperate, but you got to put that aside and put that away. You would like a sale at some point. Of course we would. We're trying to grow our organization, our company. So instead, think of it as, how can I build a relationship? How can I build trust? And how can I enjoy earning a sale with them, not on them? And give applies to every client interaction. It must be remembered through the act step and the connect step as well. It's not just a separate tactic. It's part of the posture you bring to the relationship. All right, I promised that we wouldn't forget tracking and rewarding. So we will touch on that as well. Of course, they're absolutely vital. And I said before, I didn't lead with them just because I wanted to emphasize the know, act, connect, and give, so you can remember that. So those can be your key takeaways. But they're obvious necessities. If you want autonomy, mastery, and purpose, you got to still track your progress. That's a part of that. And knowing, how you track it and having a good way to track it can be a motivator in itself. Like I said, it can give you some dopamine. One of the things that I do that I kind of enjoy just for tracking my activity is I have a wipe off board right here next to my desk. And if I've got to focus on something every single day, then I'll write if I did it today, and I actually put some significant time. Some people say like you got to put in an hour or 2 hours. But for me, if I know I put a significant effort in, I put today's date up on the wipe off board. And then the next day, I put tomorrow's date and so on. And then you kind of love seeing that string developing. And it helps build discipline. And if you have a day where, you just can't work on it, well, then, you have a gap, but then you want to get back to building that string again. So just little motivators like that can really make a difference. Okay, so and actually with tracking, I meant you can see on the slide here, these are all things we would go through with the full workshop. What activities you track, setting goals, minimum and maximum goals, tracking your progress is important, tracking growth, tracking follow-up activities, making sure that you pay attention and celebrate the small wins and the big wins, and of course, tracking results. And tracking impact. If there's any way that you can find a way to track impact, that can be really powerful too. So like I said, we go into that in more detail in the big workshop. All right, with rewards, we're looking at, how can we reward the team or individual team members? How can we reward learning and growth? And of course, making sure that your rewards are in alignment with your values. And again, we'll cover that in all of those more in the full workshop. All right, so now we're going to get, we don't have time to go too fully into all of these, but I wanted to dive into the know side just a little bit more, just by touching on a couple of the areas. So knowing your market, there's several ways to learn your market. You can certainly do, research, observation, networking, and connecting, as you can see there. That research can be, just looking up the company on their website, looking them up on LinkedIn. You can ask ChatGPT for help. That can be helpful. Where I find ChatGPT or some of the other AI tools to be helpful is more in the industry data. And things like that, trying to find out what's going on in the industry and your client's industry, so you can ask good questions and really understand them better. Observation can be as simple as just driving around, walking your market, which worked as a banker. It may not work for all organizations. Networking can just be having coffee with people who know that space, know the arena. And of course, connecting, I put connecting here, and for me, connecting really has always been about being involved in the community. Being involved in associations, in industry events, in the chamber, city club, things like that. So that kind of connection really can help you understand your market. All right, I wanted to talk to you about the elevator speech because this has been a real bugaboo for me. This has been a struggle. You got to get to a point where it's comfortable. It has to somehow matter to the people that whoever you're sharing that with on the elevator. You got to have a way to remember it. And with all that, how are you going to develop your elevator speech? Um, and I'm often, just last week I was asked what my elevator speech was, and I stuttered. I had to stop for a second and go, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm supposed to know that. I'm supposed to know that. And part of the challenge is that I've never been a big fan of scripts or memorization because I'm so committed to this being real and having things come from my heart and not be something that's just memorized. So I do recommend that when you're trying to develop your elevator speech, just memorize the key points you want to share and then get comfortable talking about those points naturally. I think that's really powerful. That said, I just recently was certified in perceptual intelligence. And Eric Van Alstine has a wonderful program around perceptual intelligence. But through that process, the only way that I could survive through all that, and actually spent some time talking with Eric about this himself, but flashcards made a real difference. And who would have thought? I haven't touched a flashcard for 50 years. And so I had to get used to having to do it. At first, it was a little uncomfortable, honestly, but it actually helped me build my confidence. It really helped me get a little bit better and even more knowledgeable about the subject matter for that certification. So I think it's useful for an elevator speech too. So I just kind of want to throw that out there. So that can be maybe helpful as you're doing that. So lead generation, that's kind of that's like the elephant in the room. I mean, that's the hardest part for all of us, right? Where do we even come up with our leads? And of course, and that's something that I have struggled with. I thought I was a good marketer as a banker. I'm not. I'm having to learn from scratch as an entrepreneur, and I'm on my 6th year in this company. It's really a matter of marketing mix. You can't just necessarily do one thing. So I recommend using more than one approach. But as you're doing it, always remember the human drivers in every interaction. Whether you're talking to a referral source, a prospect, a center of influence, or a current client, you always want to remember your human drivers. So, and the other thing that I wanted to raise up here is that you want to make sure, you're going to have to find a way, how are you going to reach out to the client? And whether that's email or LinkedIn or phone or in person or some combination of that, or as a banker, it might be just, stopping in at the company. You got to kind of discern and really think about the client. What's going to work best for them? Is this the kind of client that's going to appreciate, one or the other? So I really recommend that in terms of how you really connect with folks. I think with cold calls, that's something I'd rather avoid. They're scary, but they can add value, and they've got to be part of your marketing mix at some level. I still think that the key is to let trust and values and motivation kind of guide you. One way that you can do that is to help try to create maybe a warmer cold call, maybe an introduction from someone who knows you. Maybe through, like I said, these interactions with Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, maybe PDX B Corp, or association or Rotary or something like that. As you're getting to know people, then that can kind of warm up the cold call. So as a small town banker, most of my career, Almost none of my sales were cold calls. All of them were somewhat warmed up because I at least knew the person. And so that really helped you to be more genuine and the connection to be more genuine. Plus, when you're involved in those organizations, when people experience you through service and contribution, they get to know the real you, and doors just kind of open more naturally. The other thing that I wanted to say here is it's okay and it's good to get help drafting emails or drafting LinkedIn introductions. AI can help to some extent, but I really recommend a communications or marketing professional. I've known a couple of them and they've been really helpful. They can really help you reach out in your voice and get used to creating, a basic email or LinkedIn that you can use. But even when you do that, I still recommend that take that framework that they help you with, and then kind of connect that with what you know about the client and customize it so that it's something that they'd want to hear, so it's more real. It still comes from your heart. So as you can see, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the 1,000 emails to the same email going out to everyone. I'd rather do more quality ones that are somewhat customized. All right, and just touching on sales follow-up, there's the follow-up right after the sales session in the short term. Um, the first 90 days really sets the tone in building a relationship of trust and satisfaction and loyalty. So this is really a key time. And then once you've done that, so you've completed the sale, you've done some initial follow-up, you're all good there, you still need to do more follow-up. And again, I with 29 people signing up for this, and I don't know how many actually are here, but you all have different products and different services that you offer. So this is going to vary for everyone. So I get that. But if you have an organization or a product or service where building a long-term relationship makes a difference, then this really comes into play, especially. So, you can ask yourself, how will you foster, nurture, and build a relationship based on what you know about this client? It might be, just some relationship check-ins, some personal, I care about you, interested in you kind of check-ins. It might be sharing valuable information or articles, but continue to be curious, being curious about the client, about their needs, about their interests, and make sure that it's still about them. And, really ask yourself, what kind of experience would they want to have? All right, so let's see, we're 45 minutes in. So we still have time to dive into kind of the leading the process. So that's just that was the healthy sales framework itself. And now we'll talk a little bit about how to lead that, your leadership role.
Hey,
Of course, we go
Dawn.
much deeper. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's Riley, and this isn't a question from a chat. This is just my question. How much
Yes.
is too much? How much communication and how much like is too much, would you say?
Um, Well, that's why I brought that up, and I'm so glad you asked the question because I do want to emphasize that the how much is too much. My best answer for that is that if you are trying to think about it from the client's perspective and what experience they would want to have, that will guide that answer. And now the more straightforward answer is that, you know, I've heard people say quarterly, every 6 months or something like that. And I think you've got to get a feel for that. And I always had to with some clients I knew, wanted to see me once a year. In fact, I had clients that had me over, to an annual dinner of theirs, or they had to have a special meeting every single year. And so that was really, really important to them. But and then also it depends to maybe help answer that question. It depends on what kind of contact it is. Is it, having coffee? Is it an actual more formal meeting? More formal meetings are probably going to happen a lot less frequently. That's more like annually, right? Or even maybe every 2 years. But just touching base with them, saying hi to them, connecting with them when you're out in the community, you want to run up to them every time there's an event, or they're going to start running away from you. But you can say hi, on every other one, that kind of thing. So I think knowing your client and focusing on what experience they might want to have will answer that question. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that helps. And again, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I'll interrupt on.
Yes, please do. That'd be great. All right, so leading healthy sales, the things that I would really want to emphasize here is mindset development and then tracking and rewarding. The mindset piece, and again, all of this is going to be talked about and explored very in a much more active, interactive way in the full workshop. We try to have a lot of fun in the workshops. But mindset in this case, in terms of leading healthy sales, and you'll see the connection, really means believing in and valuing your team members. That's where you start. That's your absolute first starting point for your mindset for leading healthy sales. Because we're trying to lead the human drivers, right? So going with the old sales 101 leadership model, it's got to be adjusted a little bit. And looking at the development side, you're going to be looking at psychological safety, performance mastery, helping people keep growing and focusing more on the growing and getting better and better. Focusing on how can you help them see their own potential. A lot of times people have no idea what their potential is. I've seen that countless times as a leader. And it's so exciting when you can help people actually start to see and the light bulb go on and what they're capable of. And then helping them be the best they can be. Another thing that that leaders can do is you can teach the human drivers, model them, of course, and teach them, trust and values and motivation. You'll want your team to be part of that too, right? And then, of course, teaching them the know, act, connect, give approach, the framework itself, and then tracking and rewarding in ways that reinforce your culture. Not just ways that are straight from Sales 101. I keep bashing Sales 101. I apologize. Well, I kind of apologize. So along that way, just wanted to touch on leadership styles. There are 4 leadership styles that really, when combined, are very powerful at leading this kind of a sales approach. Authentic leadership, that's associated with Bill George. And really what he was trying to say, I recommend his book as well, because what his definition of authenticity is really helpful to get a good framework for it. But it's more about strong positive values, long-term sustainability, real relationships, purpose, and genuine leadership rather than trying to perform within a style. So that's the authentic leadership side. You've all heard of servant leadership. That's associated with Robert Greenleaf. Greenleaf focused on serving and supporting the people who do the work, letting go of ego, knowing your people, believing in them, and then supporting them toward the organizational goals. Transformational leadership is another popular one. That's Burns that did those books. I've got a couple of those on the back shelf. You might see them. Transformational leadership is really focusing on inspiring and energizing the team. So that can be really useful. And then adaptive leadership, which is associated with HIFETs. It's especially important in complex environments where the path is unclear. And sometimes in a sales environment, that can be the case. And what HIFET says is that the more complex or uncertain the pathway, the more important it is to involve stakeholders early. So if, like, for example, if you have a sales process and nobody knows how to do this particular, how to approach this client or how to sell this type of service or product, well, then involve your team earlier. Let's get everyone in to help build that. They're on the front lines. And so, pulling everyone in early, the earlier the better is really vital. So if you put all these together, each one of these are really good, but each one of these honestly have a bit of a gap, and the 4 of them combined kind of fill each other's gaps. So this is I call it a leadership cocktail, but that's probably not the best for terminology for it, but it's really a mix of all of them. All right. So coaching, the coach must believe in the person that they're developing. It's really hard to encourage someone and help them to see their own potential if you don't believe in them too. Think of coaching as like the three bears situation. You know, if you're too rigid and you remove agency and autonomy, which I've experienced in the banking world at times, then that's not a good thing. You've removed their agency and autonomy, and you've clearly impacted the human drivers, right? If you're too casual, though, then you don't even drive mastery or autonomy enough. So you kind of want to be in that middle ground as much as possible. The key is often simply doing the coaching with a good balance, spending time with people, listening to them, hearing them, helping them, removing obstacles, and helping them grow and develop. And when you do all of that, you show them that you actually value them, which is super important, and it has tangible results. I did a meta-analysis a few years ago, actually, and looked at a whole bunch of different coaching studies. And that's really what it boiled down to. It was more about this, about spending time with people and listening to them, helping them, removing obstacles and developing people, and helping them, having them feel like they're valued and opening up to the whole engagement process, the whole engagement. That was the most important part of coaching. It wasn't necessarily, I use this coaching program or this coaching program. It was more the connection, the time and attention. So just some quick coaching tools. You want to build on people's strengths if at all possible. That's really a great place to start. It's really helpful to create opportunities for reflection. Joint calls with team members can really help them grow. You definitely want to remove barriers wherever possible. That means you got to hear what the barriers are. You want to make sure that your team members are heard. Shrinking the change. That's from the Heath's book, Switch. It's a really good one. But shrinking the change for them can make it a little easier for them to grow and to take the journey. And you want to celebrate effort, and sometimes even celebrating mistakes or acknowledging them, accepting them as part of the growth process can be a real positive thing and help them turn mistakes into growth. And of course, using a hybrid of digital tools and in-person support. That's getting more and more difficult as more people are more remote, but using those tools, both of those, some combination can be really helpful. And with this, I wanted to kind of also raise up talent whisperers. Coyle wrote a book on talent whisperers that's really good. And it's what Coyle talked about was it's more than a pep talk when you're coaching. They listen, a talent whisperer listens more than they talk. They offer small targeted guidance. They know the subject matter. And the focus is on knowing and sensing the person that they're developing. That way, this coaching is really attentive, it's specific, and it's responsive. And from that whole approach, taking that mindset into coaching really is super powerful. That's the name Talent Whisperers, right? Pretty cool name. I didn't coin it. That was Coyle's. So team sales culture. A healthy team sales culture is reflected in the consistent behaviors and interaction of all team members. It invites, welcomes, and fosters new ideas, and fosters and welcomes new knowledge and learning about client relationships and sales. So you can see there's a lot of inviting and welcoming and learning involved in a healthy team sales culture. So reward systems. These start to get a little bit more thoughtful, I'll say, with healthy sales over Sales 101. That's kind of the benefit of Sales 101. Sales 101 really focuses on the extrinsic rewards. But as we know, healthy sales is driven by trust, values, and motivation. So we got to be careful to recognize what's the most powerful form of motivation, intrinsic motivation. So how can we kind of do a little bit of both? There's a place for extrinsic motivation, financial rewards and bonuses and stuff like that. But we don't want to do it to the extent that it crowds out the power of the intrinsic motivation. Compensation and reward systems really shape whether salespersons support one another or compete with one another. In team-based environments, incentive design can strengthen collaboration or unintentionally fuel rivalry and negative competition. Healthy sales reward systems do more than push for results. They produce better results by engaging those human drivers that shape how people perform, collaborate, and grow, which of course are trust, values, and motivation, right? So that's the reward system. And, really with tracking, this is the same list. It's kind of hard to get into more of that than, without the full workshop. It just takes a little bit of time to dive into this part. But really, you're tracking activities. Of course, you're setting minimum and maximum goals. You're tracking progress. You're tracking growth and learning, tracking follow-up activities, and celebrating small wins, big wins, results, and impact again. Did I already talk about rewards? Did I get slides in there doubly?
Yes, you did talk about rewards.
Okay, look at that. And I think I have most of my good points on this particular notes sheet. Oh, well, sorry about that. All right, I think we actually, we're an hour in, so that's good timing because I really wanted to spend the last half an hour talking about the investor side. So as you can see here, what I was hoping to do, I'd love to invite a discussion as much as possible. And I know with a good number of people in here that might be a little more challenging, but I really would encourage you to unmute as we talk about this. Get involved in the chat side, and you can bring up any questions or ideas or anything like that, and just flood the chat. Let's have fun with it. And I will open my screen up here so that I can see the chats better. But before we get into that, I do have a few thoughts I wanted to kind of share on this. I'm thinking that healthy sales can strengthen investor relationships by engaging those natural human drivers. Investors need confidence in their people and the people that they're working with, not just the opportunity. A values alignment around purpose, priorities, and ways of working matters. Investors are going to be motivated by more than just return. They're also going to be motivated by meaning and confidence and timing, belief in the people that they're working with, and the results, right? Investment decisions are shaped by the quality of the relationship and the ability to engage authentically. And I think that the goal is not to pressure investors into a transaction. It's to build the kind of relationship in which investment becomes a natural next step, much like sales. So it's just some of the questions that I kind of wanted to pose to us as we're thinking about this is, which human driver, it might be all three, but which more human driver do you think is most important in driving investor relationships? Maybe we should focus on that first rather than just throwing all the questions out there. I'm going to stop share for a moment so I can focus.
Oh, yeah, I was going to tell you. Yeah, that's okay. Somebody said trust is important in the chat.
I wanted to try to open up the chat.
And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to respond directly.
The chat's not opening for me.
Okay. Well,
well, it did. It finally did. Okay.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to try to see what questions might be coming up too. And yeah, I can share a list of the books. So Jason, you mentioned trust. Um, what were your thoughts around that? What were you what brought that? What brought trust as the key one? Are you comfortable sharing that?
I wasn't sure if we're coming off mute or if this is all chat, but
No,
yeah,
I'm encouraging a little bit of both here.
I feel without trust, there's no real, as you said earlier, authentic relationship. So you can't move forward with any deal without some form of trust.
Yeah, totally agree. Absolutely. Anybody else have any thoughts on trust as being really important to investor relationships?
I would say that trust is incredibly important because the minute you break it, that deal and that relationship is over. And potentially relationships with other investors because investors talk. They talk about companies, they talk about founders. So making sure that you're the most authentic person you can be as you're moving into investor conversations is incredibly important.
Yeah, thank you, Riley. That's perfect. How about speaking with trust? How can, in your experience, how can we help potential investors feel trust and connection early? How can we start to build that as early as possible? We covered some thoughts, and I'm hoping that some of the stuff we talked about in the previous hour could be helpful for this discussion.
Hey,
I'm
Dr.
thinking,
Gomes, I would say to build that, it's actually in your connect bullet points, which is you've got to be authentic. You've got to be genuine. You can't lie your way through. Not saying anybody's going to lie, but you've got to be authentic about it. And the other thing that you mentioned, which is really critical in building that trust factor, is are you going to do what you say you're going to do? There's a lot of people promise a lot of things, but they don't follow through. And sometimes, we get too um, passionate or believe in our product so deeply that we may overpromise. And then there are going to be times when you have not come through, and that's the time to walk up and say, "I apologize. I overpromised." And everybody knows you're going to make a mistake, but the fact that you fess up to it and you acknowledge that you messed up and I apologize, won't happen again, and learn from it. So I think those are the things that build that trust. And as Riley said, and it could take one simple thing and years of work is gone. So it's better be authentic because if you go back and you apologize, sorry, I was not aware of that, I overpromised, people are going to be understanding, they're going to be willing to give you a second chance.
absolutely. Thank you, Sean. And I think that's even particularly important to this group because this is Oregon entrepreneurs, right? And typically, I'm stereotyping here, but typically I'm thinking that entrepreneurs are pushing the envelope. You're doing things that nobody else has ever done before, and breaking new ground. And so mistakes, might be a little bit more apt to happen along the way. And so, Sean, your advice there is really valuable. Thank you for that. And I noticed in the chat that the showing up consistently, clear communication is really, really important. And Suzanne mentioned understanding the investor's vision for the future. Absolutely, that's knowing your client in essence, right? So this isn't necessarily just about your vision for the future as an entrepreneur, but understanding their vision for what they'd love to see. So I think that's an important part too. Anything else that stood out today that could strengthen your investor conversations?
I think along the lines of what Sean was saying, I think transparency up front as much as possible. Sometimes it can be the natural inclination to, always trying to provide the best foot forward, but being honest up front on, where maybe there are gaps in match. is also a big trust builder.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transparency early on, yeah, that helps in that arena too. Thank you. The other thing that I think that jumps out at me that I wanted to emphasize was that this is another place where desperation can kill everything. Right? We can so badly need or so excitedly, be so excited about this potential investment that's driving the relationship, driving the interaction, and that could totally stop it. So that's going to get in the way of. There's actually some studies on catering that gets around that. It actually cuts down on our memory and our ability, the power of our prefrontal cortex to think things through when we're desperately trying to cater to something rather than just interact. And remember, investors can feel when they're being pressed rather than just being engaged. You don't need to force a decision today. You're building a relationship that maybe could lead to investment over time or down the road. So approach the conversation as an opportunity to help, understand, and connect, not persuade them. And remember, often the most valuable things you can offer are presence, clarity, and authenticity. And remember that your mindset is not how to sell them, it's how to create enough trust and shared understanding that they want to move forward. So any other thoughts on the three drivers as far as investors? So I wanted to jump next into the know, act, connect, give. And I would show the slide to you, but honestly, it's not going to do much anyway because it just says those 4 words. So my notes went all the way to the very beginning again. I don't know what I did to cause that.
Well, I think sometimes they just go back to when you stop sharing. Sometimes they go back.
Oh, maybe that was it. Okay.
It's a glitch of Zoom.
So as far as know, act, connect, and give, a healthy sales approach to investor relationships uses that same core pattern, right? It's knowing your investor as much as you can. Know their priorities, their interests. This is really piggybacking on what Suzanne said. Yeah, knowing their priorities, knowing their interests, knowing their criteria, knowing what drives them, if you can, what their values are as much as you can, and then act by showing that you can be prepared, being prepared by having good follow through, build your credibility that way. Connect by building a real relationship, not just a pitch interaction, and give by offering value, insight, clarity, and confidence before asking for a commitment. Just be giving. I think that people appreciate that. Any thoughts on the know, act, connect, give part on how that can be helpful for an investor relationship? All right, so with that, I think we can kind of I just want to do a brief recap. So the whole desired outcomes for healthy sales that we're shooting for are healthy performance, a healthy client experience, a healthy team member experience, and a healthy team experience. And all of those outcomes kind of reinforcing each other. remembering that the human drivers, the human dynamics that provide the power, the energy behind sales success, healthy sales success, are trust, values, and motivation. So really want that to be a good takeaway for everyone. These are not soft areas. These are the drivers that shape how people decide, relate, and perform. So they're really, really important guides for us as we go along the way. And in terms of the how, the key takeaway I'm hoping that you'll have is the know, act, connect, and give. How those pieces structure the healthy sales process itself. And remember that test too. And we can just make sure that through that process that you were testing our process, our sales process, to the 3 human drivers and to the know, act, connect, and give as well. With that, I just wanted to thank everyone for your time and engagement, and open to any questions. Is there any questions about what we've talked about today? I'd love to hear them and have a conversation.
Yeah, you're free to open your mics if you have any questions. I do have a question, Dawn. You gave a lot of great advice. What would be the first thing you would do to like the first thing to clean up how we're communicating within sales? Like say that you're a startup and you're just getting ramped up, you're hitting a place where you're going to go to that next first level. And like, what's the first thing you would do to clean up things that you had potentially done in the past?
I want to give you a really quick answer, but
Oh no, I know it's probably
I'm
long.
going to give you my answer as well, which I know there's a couple members on this on today that will know that my answer is not ever short. But I honestly, I believe in this framework. I believe that revisiting trust, values, and motivation, and understanding them, and having that be your guide, is first. You got to have a starting point and really get to that mindset, and then it's a matter of the cleanup starts to come in the actual framework itself. The know, act, connect, and give. That your framework, by having a framework, it gives you the tools to then go in and do that cleanup. And like I said, with our full workshop, we really get into that, and we get into that customized for the company as well. So you can start really diving into how to do those pieces, if that helps. Any other questions from anyone?
Yeah, it looks like Jared has a question.
Jared.
Yeah, hi. So we are an early stage. We just launched in January. Right now, prospecting, reaching out to relationships that we have, and just trying to build awareness for our products. So a lot of my conversations right now are very early stage sales conversations. And so my question for you is, how would you approach, using this framework, how would you approach those first few calls with prospects, and maybe assume that you've got very limited time, especially on that first call. Most of the calls that I'm having are 30 minutes long, which then I'm trying to take that into a follow-up call or a demo of our solution. But just curious on your thoughts in terms of how you would approach those first few calls.
What I like to do, Jared, first of all, is with my prep, I try to make sure that my mindset's in the right place to start with. So before every meeting, you're thinking about trust and values and motivation before you go in. And what are you trying to accomplish here? You're trying to accomplish a relationship, and you want them to have autonomy and agency and not feel like you're trying to persuade them. You're not trying to manipulate them into a sale, right? So making sure you have that healthy mindset going in. And I do that as often as I can remember to do it, but it does help me kind of reset my head going in, so that I don't accidentally, because as a banker for 35 years, I have been through sales 101 from several different iterations. And And honestly, whenever I fall into those instructions that have been burned into my head for decades, I don't do well. So I partially built this whole class on, what actually I was successful with instead of what I was taught to do. But that's one of the pieces, is just making sure you get your mindset to start with in the first place. And along that line, I'll stop myself in the middle of a conversation and just take a 1 second. Obviously, you can't take a 10-second break necessarily in the middle of a conversation, but just stop myself and go, wait a minute, am I doing this within the trust, values, and motivation mindset? Am I building a relationship here? Am I being authentic? Am I providing the kind of experience that person would want to be sitting in right now? I think that's the most important thing. Okay, the second part of the answer that I wanted to provide is that I think the challenge, and I'm doing this too, because I'm 6 years into this, but since I've been focusing on my doctor for the last 5, I feel like I just started this company to some extent. I'm now putting all my energy into it. So I'm in the same spot, but I feel like there's got to be a balance in that half an hour between, they want to hear about your organization and what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish. That's got to be a part of it. But if you have a half an hour, you can't take 29 minutes of those or 30 minutes of those and it be all about you. We've got to somehow make sure that they're brought into it, that they're a part. This is a conversation. It's a dialogue. It's not a one-sided discussion of what you have to offer. So I think even the most obvious thing is, how can you mix it up so that it's back and forth, or it's 15 minutes of, plan on 10 or 15 minutes of all about you, and make sure that you've blocked in 10 minutes about them. So there might be some tricks around that. I don't know if any of that helps, but those are the first two things that come to mind.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Jared.
Any other questions from folks? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Oh, I guess I could scroll up. Oh, I did. Good. I don't see anything else on
I don't see either, Don.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This was really fun. And again, I apologize for talking so fast. I hope that didn't ruin the experience. But there was just so much to share, and I was desperate to make sure that I didn't miss too much.
No, you did great, Don. Thank you so much. Again, this has been recorded, and we're going to be sharing it with you all. Don, I'm putting it on your plate to send me a list of all the books that you recommended throughout the program. You had quite a robust. Everybody go to Powell's this weekend and find all the books that he recommends. Again, thank you, Don. We can't offer these programs without the thought leadership of our community. So we're really, so encouraged by the folks stepping forward to provide advice and information for our founders to be really successful. You'll get a recording. You get a wrap-up email from us as a team. We all have a list of other programs. In fact, Suzanne and Kyle are here. They're going to be hosting next Thursday our event on leadership. So we're super excited to have them here. But please don't hesitate to reach out to the OEN team if you need anything. We're happy to make connections with our community, and we are here to support you every step of the way. So we look forward to seeing you all at future events. And thanks again, Don. Hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Riley. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.